Live?
Mhm.
Hi, welcome to First Geek Congregation. Um, as usual, we're starting a little late. I actually had moved time back to being that we're going to start at 2:10. Today we're starting at 2:20. But there's some good reasons for that. Last week we had a guest speaker, Jody Simon from Wichita State University. Jody's a great gal. She had brought some great opinions with her and some facts for us to look at and a lot of things to think about. One of the problems was, though, the audio completely flaked out on us. It's not that you couldn't hear it at all, just mostly couldn't hear it. So we spent a little bit of extra time today making sure that the audio worked right. So if you have any complaints about the audio, please get a hold of us on Facebook at facebook.com/firstgeekcongregation or tweet us at
First Geek Con.
First Geek Con. Thank you. Couldn't remember the handle suddenly. The other thing we did is I noticed, okay, when I'm up here, I really don't care. I'm kind of a little overweight and balding. I really don't care too much about my personal appearance beyond have I showered today. However, when I saw what our guests looked like, I realized we were shooting from a really, really horrible angle. So now we actually have the cameras up a little bit, or a camera, single $20 Logitech webcam. We have it up a little bit, so next time we have a guest speaker, we make our guest speakers look a little bit better.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep my face all deadpan and stuff. Sometimes my emotions show through, which is sounding kind of mean, that I realize what our guests look like.
No, I didn't mean that our guests look horrible. No, our guests did not look horrible.
That's what you meant, but I was like...
Did I mention there's a lot of sarcasm? We're supposed to be about love, peace, and respect, and apparently sarcasm and hilarity, too. I'm fine with this. I said I'm fine with this, personally. Anybody who knows me personally knows it's a whole lot of sarcasm.
Yep.
My wife actually had to make a rule, no sarcasm before 9 a.m. I break it daily.
I'm at work before 9 a.m., just so you know that.
And you're going to hear me repeat this every week. We're actually at the center of Wichita, which is 800 North Market, Main North Market. Market, thank you. 800 North Market. The center of Wichita is kind of a LGBT community center. We're not an LGBT church or gathering or congregation, however you want to look at us, but we're a friendly group. We don't care what somebody's orientation is. So this is a good match for us, but I want to mention this because they're always looking for help. They're always looking for donations to help get this place finished up. We're in their small conference room right now, for instance, because they're still finishing the bigger conference room that we'll be moving to on a much longer basis. So, if you get a chance, check them out. You can catch them, look at them on Facebook at facebook.com/thecenterofwichita.com or go to thecenterofwichita.org. There's a huge banner right there I could have looked at. Anyways, today we're gonna be talking about a couple of things, and I'll be honest. Today I'm horribly unprepared. I got to manage to get about an hour of preparation time, and part of the reason was we had a friend that we've moved in with us who had some health issues and had to move my office and yada yada yada. Left us a whole lot of less time to do the usual prep work. So I've actually got two topics. We'll see how long either topic actually lasts. The first one is addiction, and I mentioned this for a reason. Every once in a while, you'll probably see me puff on one of these. See, I've got addiction issues. I smoke a lot.
It's not the only addiction you have.
Talking about my iced tea, because I was going to get into that. See, addiction's an interesting thing. And my wife, being slightly sarcastic, also had to point out I actually have only two?
No.
I'm addicted to oxygen.
One would say communication and/or technology. Define addiction.
Well, see, that's one of the things we're going to get into. What? In fact, let's just jump into it real quick. I'm quitting smoking. I'm giving up my caffeine. That's the reason for me looking into addiction from a biblical and religious standpoint. But you have a great point. What is addiction? What do we as a society define as an addiction?
when it becomes something you sacrifice your needs and the needs of others to get.
Changes the way you live.
One would say that running water changes the way you live.
No, I mean, it changes the way that you have been in order to satisfy something that is different.
But one could say the same thing if you've been living in a ghetto apartment and now you own a house. I changed the way I was living and it's not a addiction.
Well, yeah, but that's yeah, but that's more of a perspective thing, you know. It's just an upward mobility thing. I mean,
Well,
we'll say it'd be a negative aspect, you know.
Well, just being clear.
I understand.
change how you
You're
live.
not, there you go. You weren't on the camera.
Change how you live for a thing, or
There you
be a
go.
cigarette, or alcohol, or what have you. What else?
Not a house.
You're almost not on camera, just so you know that. There you go.
In there.
See, changing how this works, it also changes how much space I have to work with now. What else? What else do we define?
You can't stop. I mean, that's really what we think of, right?
Easily stop. When you don't want to stop.
Well, and see, yet again, because I like playing the adversary. What
You
if
know.
you say the don't want to stop thing? I love my husband. I don't want to ever stop loving him. Is that an addiction? In some people's life,
to your husband.
in some people's life, it is an addiction,
Well, let's
but in other people's, it's not.
add one thing.
Oxygen.
Almost everything that we talk about when we talk about addiction is always viewed food. Hang on, because you're about to say, wait a minute, wait a
Unless
minute.
it's a health
It's
issue.
real.
For those of you at home who can't hear me glare at me,
Unless it's a health issue or a money issue or a
Because that's the thing right there, is there's a point where where we view it as a negative, then we can be addicted to food
gluttony.
or gluttony. There's
gluttony
a,
has nothing to do with food addiction. Just be clear on the difference.
and actually gluttony, yeah.
I was just trying to get that out there before it became an adversarial thing.
Fair enough.
Adversary to the adversary.
And my wife makes a good adversary. Anyways,
I know.
my wife's staring at me now.
Yeah, well, he said, I know. I will not throw carrots.
What else do we have? Anything else? Anything else?
Not as long as you put the negatives put on it. He's getting an eraser for those of you at home.
Anyways, so we've got an idea what addiction is. And actually, I've got an extra one that I always threw in. When I joined a congregation, the question of addiction come up, and I had to ponder it a while. And mine was, what would I put before God? Would I put something before God? That to me was where the line for addiction was. Would I do this rather than go to church? Would I do this rather than sit there and listen to the message? Would I do this? And oddly enough, my answer was no. For like smoking, I would sit there and I'd sit in there 2.5 hours for a service was no big deal. Actually, I had one part that I'd get up and get a stretch for anyways because my back had started killing me. But beyond that, it's no big deal. So I didn't have a problem with it that way. But that was my definition. But you notice that my definition kind of fits for me all right. Because, well, I'm obviously not addicted because I can sit there for 2.5 hours.
That should be a
And
rationale
as
for
an
your addiction.
observer, I would beg to differ with that. because more often than not, when you got up to stretch, you would go outside and have a cigarette.
Absolutely.
And for your ADHD, you would also be playing with your phone or your iPad whilst listening to the message.
Yes.
That's communication and technology.
If it's never been mentioned on here before, I have ADHD. I have learned certain coping mechanisms with ADHD. Technology is actually one of the things I use to avoid. I can concentrate better. If I split my attention a couple of ways, play a game on the phone or something like that, I suddenly am able to pay attention to conversations. I don't know why. I just can't. So, anyways, and the ADHD thing also factors into that whole not smoking thing. Smokers, people with ADHD, actually find a whole lot of different chemical ways of self-treatment. They never realize it. Smoking is one of them. Nicotine actually helps people who have ADHD focus a little better. So does
caffeine.
So does caffeine. A number of illicit drugs also, which I do not partake of, do the same thing. Though they sell Ritalin, things like that. They're the same equivalent. Yeah, they find good ways of justifying continuing to do it because, well, if I quit smoking, my ADHD is going to get worse, and she's going to point out how bad it really gets, I'm sure.
It makes me need to drink.
And honestly, my ADHD goes through the roof when I quit smoking. And I've quit smoking before, so this time I'm partaking of nicotine via the e-cigs. So hopefully that helps. So now here's the next question. What can we be addicted to?
Any stimulant. Literally, that's from a scientific point of view. I do that. I'm not going to judge. I'm dyslexic. I write them in not necessarily the order in which they occur.
What
I was just wondering if it was okay. Okay.
I think he's being a smart aleck.
I truly do not judge his handwriting anymore.
Well, I missed last week. I gotta catch up.
It's okay if other treats me too. I haven't seen it in a month. I have to give you all the crap it has.
Any stimulant. Define a stimulant then. You talked about a chemical?
I'm talking about from a scientific point of view. Because it's light and sound, anything that affects the 5 to 6 senses. Any stimulant.
It's 7 to 9.
You have a different book than I do. Shut up.
11, 12.
I continue to learn after. Anyways.
13.
I will not throw my carrot.
Please don't. Clean those up.
I'm just imagining throwing
22.
star carrots.
Boing. Anyways.
Sorry.
I think there's a reason
Carrot
that's the
sticky
chips
addiction.
instead of living in a hole.
So addiction can actually be anything. Stimulant could be would normally be taken as a chemical thing. If you want to get technical, we're only addicted to 2 things. 2 chemicals in the brain, that's it. Whatever it is that stimulates those chemicals in the brain is what our addiction is.
Story about a lady who's addicted to eating cat hair. No, it's stimulant. Cat hair.
It was
In the scientific.
scientific. If you chewed on something, they said your own flesh.
Well, there's video games, there's nicotine, alcohol, all of these things, all of them, tons of things. Anything that you can imagine, people become addicted to. People have been known to play video games and totally ignore their kids. People have been known to play video games and ignore their life. Now, I'll have to admit, I used to be a World of Warcraft player at one time, and I gave it up. I have a no MMO rule in my life because of how time consuming they can become. And they are very addictive. I have a friend who's a plumber who went through a whole phase of addiction to World of Warcraft, to the point of kind of letting business slide a little bit, letting his health slide a little bit. Eventually, he woke up one day with the same realization I had. Like, we can't do this anymore. This is bad. I'm not getting things done. He was not getting his plumbing jobs done. Was not selling these jobs. So it happens. It can be anything. People read books at one time. There was people that had whole castes of people who had problems with reading so much in the way of books. They were addicted to them. They would ignore their children in exchange to read another story. So there's everything. Now the question becomes, because there's exchanged looks here. The question becomes, what does the Bible define as an addictive thing?
Anything that gets put before God.
Pretty much right there. Now, what becomes interesting is that there's whole groups, certain sections of the Baptists, for instance, you're not allowed to drink. Alcohol is bad. Alcohol is bad. It's instantly addictive. It is absolutely horrible. It will ruin your life, blah, blah, blah.
I've never heard the instantly addictive part.
That is an individual. I'm taking that from a single individual, to be quite honest, rather than as an overall philosophy.
Part of that with the drinking is the altered state of mind. Because the Mormons don't drink caffeine.
Is there anything biblical against an altered state of mind?
There's the encouragement to think soberly. But I can't remember where it was.
Keeping control of oneself is mentioned.
Control.
Is mentioned?
Personally, I think the concept of moderation, because you're supposed to drink the new wine and all this other stuff. But there's the concept of moderation and self-control. However, self-control is defined in your little world. Because obviously I'm eating these carrots that I'm not enjoying whatsoever, but the doctor says I'm supposed to eat them, so I'm eating them instead of throwing them across the room. So.
And we thank you for this. We thank you for this.
But in moderation, you can throw at least a couple.
You don't know what I do at work. But I have to have a very moderated diet now.
Yes.
So that is moderation.
And actually, all things in moderation is a famous statement to make. Alcohol is not banned in the Bible.
Jesus was, one of his first things was turning water into wine.
Jesus made some.
If wine was bad, he would not have done that for everyone.
One of the things that I really like in the Bible story was that Jesus was like, well, when John came along and he wasn't eating or drinking anything, you were like, he's got a demon. And when I came along, both eating and drinking, you were like, look, he's a glutton and a drunkard. So basically, I can't win with you.
Actually, apparently somebody can't read the whiteboard. Just a second to respond to this message.
I think it's the other colors. You must use the black.
Must use the black, huh? The black is working all right?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, it's showing up on the screen.
But I think some of the other colors we've talked about before.
Okay, fine. From now on, black it is. Because at least we can read that one. So, fair enough. I lost my place.
What can we be addicted to? What does Scripture say about addiction?
What does Scripture say about addiction? What I was getting to.
Isn't there some place that it does say not to take strong drink or something?
It is. At least we can read that one.
The only thing I know where it says anything about don't drink a strong drink is they're telling one of the prophet's mothers, you will become with child, do not drink strong drink or any wine. But it's kind of one of those. It was one of the warnings since she was going to be bearing a child, but it was a prophet, so.
Makes sense.
And we did
that's the only one I can never think of.
And we did get confirmation online that from the other end that people can see black better. So
Yeah,
we'll stick with
black.
black.
I'm on the other end right now.
Gotcha.
Spooky.
It's kind of creepy because it's a pretty interesting delay. Like you just now picked up your phone.
And actually, the delay is per person. Depending on when you connect to that, it may actually start you at the beginning. If you start within the first 3 minutes, it may go ahead and start you at the beginning of the event, so to catch up It's kind of weird.
Anyway,
Strong drink. Strong drink actually is mentioned in the Bible. Now I'm going to have to actually.
But I didn't know what that meant when I got to the part where Jesus was like, you think I'm a drunk and a glutton,
I think you're
I was
just
like-
using that as an argument against tea.
No, I'm not making it
Tea's
against
gross.
tea. I'm just trying to figure out what they actually meant because I don't know what that word would have been. This would have been before gin, and there's a lot of things we've developed since.
well, because
Roman times.
this has come up
They
in more
didn't
than
have-
one history
They didn't have
class.
Everclear then.
Almost. Because obviously, what would you have had first as part of civilization? You would have had wheat before grapes. So they had beer.
Yeah.
And so distilling the barley down to whiskey was not outside of reality. And even distilling, when you distill wine down, you get brandy, which could almost start a car. So then distilling it down, either on purpose or by accident, you'd get something like moonshine quite easily. Because alcohol is just what's left after you take all the rest of the stuff out of corn.
I said
I'm
they
just
had to
wondering
have
if
like
they have
glass
the technology there.
fills and things.
Okay, the stuff that's worth drinking and then the stuff that happens naturally are two different things.
Okay.
Actually,
Like,
and keep in mind, what you think about is this distillation process right now usually involves this. Here is
The modern distillation.
You really just need to boil the water off of the corn rot. Pardon me.
Well, happy face when next time.
okay,
so we start with mash, whatever it is that we're using to generate our alcohol. It could be potatoes, it could be corn. You could almost do it with marshmallows if you wanted to. Smurfs, ground Smurfs. That would be an interesting one.
If you're Gargamel.
Slight.
God, that's why he was after Jim's sword. The gold. Sorry.
All right, so we have our ground Smurfs.
Goodness.
So all you do is you take it, you heat it up to the point that you run it through a coil. Alcohol evaporates faster than water, and are you saving this for documentation later?
He's like, I have got to have this ground Smurf thing.
That's church, everybody.
This is where I attend.
Silly dog played phenomenon on the big screen.
That's true. That's true. They did it more than once. That was hilarious. All you need is cooling sections that you bring the temperature down, and your alcohol drops into a glass or whatever container. You keep the temperature from getting too high. If you get the temperature just right, you get the most amount of alcohol with the least amount of water in it. Now, the reason why I mention this is what our modern distillation system looks like.
Yes. You're going to show us an older one. Right?
That was around the time that they could have written about in the Bible.
This is a dangerous system. Producing alcohol is actually extremely dangerous.
Yes.
If you use a flame. Now, if you use the sun, on the other hand, what happens is we take our ground Smurfs, we let the sun heat up slowly but surely. The alcohol rises, sticks to a ceiling or a piece of wood or what have you that's been smoothed out. You taper it down so it reaches the glass, and it drops into the glass at the end. Distillation, the process of distillation has been around pretty much for as long as the idea of beer or fermented breads or anything, because that's where beer started from, was fermented bread. Wines theoretically may have started just from the fact that if you mash up grapes and turn it into grape juice, you leave it alone, it's going to become wine.
Well,
It's going to
become alcoholic.
It'll become a weak alcohol.
I've been drinking. It's not going to taste right. Anyway, so the concept of strong drink, they would have easily had something akin to rot gut whiskey. Just what would run out of the barn on a hot day. Because if it would have rained on a pile of grain, and then it got hot, and so it came up on the roof and it ran off, I mean, just naturally.
Well,
this
I
would
know they
happen.
mentioned beer from the Egypt, from the when they were bitching to Moses about, we left all this behind,
Yeah.
the beer and the garlic and the onions and everything.
Right.
It's like, wow.
And this is
So and even in some of the sacrifices when they're talking about the tabernacle, they talk about strong drink is mentioned twice because we always got to joke about that God would need a drink to know with us. But anything that would be a rot gut whiskey or not quite a scotch, but something like that would be one of the brown liquors would be very easy and common. Because you just distill the beer again and you get, booze.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be.
You can also do natural separate. And by the way, what I showed, that's just one of the processes that were used to be used. You can also do natural distillation, which is basically you take all the liquid off of the mash, set it aside. Eventually, over time, alcohol and water will separate a little bit. Not completely, but they'll separate a little bit. So you can just get a little bit extra oomph out of it. To give you, and this was one of those things I was actually Googling for something else as an answer, and I don't remember what I was Googling at the time when this conversation started. But this comes out of Proverbs 31:6, so it gives you kind of an idea of the mindset back then when it comes to the different types of alcohol. There is some differentiation, apparently, and I don't have enough history to tell you. But the line is, let beer be for those who are perishing, wine for those who are in anguish. So I would take that. It's an odd statement. And the whole context is, for they will drink and forget what is decreed, and pervert the rights of those, and pervert the rights of all the afflicted. Give strong drink to him who is perishing, and wine to he whose life is bitter. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his troubles no more.
Well, the strong drink definitely is a thing, because even quite recently, they still use sip of wine or thing of brandy for almost any kind of ailment. I mean, when my siblings were babies, you dump the pacifier in the whiskey and put it in their mouth when they're teething. It's
Alcohol is still a very beneficial thing. I mean,
a problem.
yes, exactly. A drop is all right. For instance, the whole thing about drinking on a regular basis. If you drink a glass of wine every day, it's extremely healthy for you. It's good for
Even
your
as
liver.
diabetic, I'm supposed to have no more than 2 drinks in a day because I'm a female. Apparently, boys could be more lushers. But yeah, and I'm like, seriously? As long as you count it against your carbs, I'm like.
but it's good for us. It's good for us in moderation. Going back to that statement that you made about moderation.
Yeah.
It is good for us.
And a lot of the beers are nutrient value to them.
Beer is a thinned out cousin of bread. It is what happens when bread goes bad. The sugar
beer, they just add more water to it.
Stuck with rice. Anyways, she might.
But that quote seemed to be the part where the queen was instructing her son on, proper behavior for like rulers. Rulers aren't supposed to be sitting here getting smashed. They're supposed to be taking care of people. It's the people that are poor and that are, perishing, they're not having that have no responsibilities for this, but are,
Yeah, 'cause if I've been run through and I'm gonna bleed out, give me a shot. I mean, really.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I agree with you on that one. Yeah, you have a point. And in fact, actually, leadership, particularly church leadership, has a whole thing on. I want to say Galatians, but I'm wrong. On the attributes to look for in a congregational leader. Ephesians. Look it up. But yeah. Anyways, basically one of the requirements, they are not to be a drunkard. Because yeah, if you don't follow that moderation thing, you end up with situations where you don't necessarily control yourself. So
Yeah, no, there's a lot of the breads, there's a lot of the beers that are fully, I mean, they have actually redeemable nutrient value in them.
well, let's face it, if you're drinking a triple bock, you've got a big old cup of wheat.
Right. Well, even when we're talking to the one nursing mother, she's like, now I'm supposed to have a stout every day to keep my milk up, and I'm like, awkward.
I know who she's talking about. Very religious gal, and she was supposed to, have to have a drink every day. Usually, we associate religious people with, well, I don't drink.
Well, that's a Protestant mindset, though.
You're right. You're right.
The rest of the world is just like, this has been part of our culture forever,
Muslims. Nothing fermented of the wine or the. Apparently, they drink honeymead then. I don't know.
It's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that either.
I was being sarcastic in that one movie. But yeah, supposedly they're not supposed to consume the fermented.
Yeah,
I don't know how they feel about yogurt then, but
there's fermenting and then there's fermenting. I mean, some people make a large separation on things like that. So
I don't know. I'm just saying.
I'm sure Protestant mindset has no problem with yogurt either. So
Big cup of Protestant yogurt.
Some of them, you'd be surprised.
Well, whenever you have, I mean, there's always an extreme for
Sure.
whatever you have. I mean, if you came down and said today, you really shouldn't cut off your arm. That's really bad. Don't cut off your arm. People would be like, can I cut off my finger?
Right.
Maybe just the tip.
Well, like one of the
you mentioned, actually, I'm gonna interject. You mentioned this, and when it comes to extremism, particularly in religion, there has been some amazing ones. For instance, the idea that it would be better to be castrated than to have sexual urges resulted in a number of Christian. Yes, that was a thing. There were groups. That's the way they went. What? What?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Shakers
Let's
did
just
not
have the
breed,
species
so
die
it's
out.
only evangelism, and they kept two separate houses.
Yes, and in case you didn't catch that, Shakers was a group that was a offshoot of the Quakers that were they were pretty extreme. They were pretty extreme.
Yeah,
to the
very
point.
devout and awesome furniture.
They're also really pretty much not around anymore. Because if you don't breed, if you don't go forth and multiply, which is why I thought the whole Shaker thing was interesting, with multiply. But
They did by evangelism. It wasn't their own bodies multiplying. They evangelized. I'm not using the word.
Hey, come over here, everybody. We got the coolest thing going on. No sex.
I gotta go.
But
That's another one.
But some of the other, but think about it. If you took that, each community had two separate longhouses, so the women and the men lived together. You had your work, that's the awesome furniture, and then you had prayer time. So your prayer house was large and sturdy and everything else like that. If you take away any one of the distractions, whether they be healthy or otherwise, and you put your fourth-year efforts into something else, how awesome is or eat your tomato garden because you're not distracted with worrying about your corn or your children.
Right.
Not saying that it's the lifestyle I would choose. I'd be married, but there's something to be said about that. The same reason the Catholics argue about the nuns and the monks is that they are so devoted to God that they can't be bothered with taking care of the family.
This awesome table. At what
Which
cost?
Well,
So
they've
we're
never schnogged. How do they know what the cost is? I'm going to feel better. Well, you know,
I was gonna
God is divine.
slowly but surely drifting off, but I'm going to throw one more thing in talking about that extremism, because biblically, when we go back, we look at those attributes that congregational leaders, ministers, etc., were supposed to have. One of them was they were supposed to have a family. So it's always struck me odd that the rule was here, but we don't. The Catholics did not allow them to have families. So.
the point, the Eastern Orthodox, you must be married before you can be ordained.
Yes.
Would you say that the Shakers were addicted to their furniture making? Or their tomato garden?
Could possibly be an healthy replacement for something.
Would you put your abstinence before God?
I don't have any abstinence.
No, I was speaking from the term of a Shaker, from the point of view of a Shaker. A Shaker. Go ahead.
Well, if they used it as their devotion to God, is it before God? Because I don't know. They're not around to talk to and ask, how did you really feel about it? For 80 years.
80 years, even though the Bible specifically told you.
Well, not even that. Just like for 80 years, you've lived in this longhouse with these other women and watched people come and go, and you have devoted yourself to God. How do you feel about this spiritually?
So you like those tomatoes? How do you like them tomatoes?
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of the scene from the movie. She didn't like tomatoes, but she was an old Southern woman. What else was she supposed to do besides grow tomatoes?
Alrighty then.
One more thing on the extremism. Dr. Kellogg, the famous cornflake guy. Okay. Narrow it down. Okay. Of the things in which he thought were abhorrent, he did get married, but still never consummated. So although he felt that something like this was abhorrent because you had urges, he still kept a wife, and apparently she didn't work because of social standards, so he gave her everything except that. So,
Yeah.
Yes, extremism is very odd.
Kellogg cornflakes originated to help prevent people from
Well,
those urges.
yes. Particularly gentlemen, because
Yes.
apparently women can control themselves. And if a woman has an urge, she's apparently incarnate with the devil and just needs to be burned at the stake.
Of course, you had to say it out loud.
I thought that was just assumed these
For
days.
the look
I
on his
know.
face. Yes, I did have to say that out loud.
Jeez, I mean, I just thought that everyone knew.
Anyway, so the concept of moderation is very important on all things.
Yes. However, it should be said, I cannot smoke moderately, because I was talking with somebody about it, and they were like, well, they smoke once a day, have one cigarette a day. No, that's not an option for me. Some people can't take things in moderation. It's either in their life completely, or it's not.
Okay, let's define the concept of moderation. I do not moderately eat zucchini. I eat it because it's been cooked for me, not because I enjoy it. But I vary in this definition, gluttonously eat my fruit. So, define moderation. You are only smoking cigarettes with filters at a pack-a-day habit. You are not smoking a pipe with no filter.
Because we don't want to see me turning green anyways.
Right. Or cigars. You are smoking something in which you can afford within your means. And you are not, if it came down to, I need a sandwich because I haven't eaten today, or I'm going to buy a pack of cigarettes, you make the choice for the sandwich and then figure out the cigarettes. So define moderation.
Well, moderation would be the opposite. It would be avoiding addiction, one might say. That's not a good way of saying it. How would I say it?
I don't know. That's why I'm
Are you, like for instance, my smoking. One of the reasons I'm quitting smoking is because, I'm getting older. I've watched a couple of people have heart attacks lately. The number of people.
Not literally.
Yes, I did not actually watch them have a heart attack. Let me be clear on this.
Whoa, man! Shouldn't somebody call somebody? Oh,
Dude,
no,
that was
well, let's watch this.
awesome.
Anyways,
No.
would be striking a balance between abstinence and extremism.
That's actually would be a form of moderation right there. You're correct.
Yeah.
You're correct. Some people
A healthy balance.
take for instance the case of alcoholics. One drink.
Well, that becomes
That would be
that
healthy
that
balance is
that
too much.
opens into a chemical dependency opportunity rather than free will or anything else like that. Because I've known some professional alcoholics who could go without the drink for days, weeks. But then I've also had the displeasure of knowing people who needed to be, 5 beers in all the time. So there's difference upon a chemical dependency and actually what you're going to sacrifice.
You're going through a lot of semantics on these.
Well, I've known enough addicts. I really feel the need to call this. I'm not just trying to annoy you at this point.
That's an added bonus.
Well, my father was an alcoholic. He went to work every day and some change.
He was a functional alcoholic.
Right.
There's a term for it.
So there was, so he might have done this. We're not going to talk about emotional abuse. So what did he sacrifice? He didn't sacrifice working. He didn't sacrifice taking care of his family in that term. Made sure the rent was paid, that kind of stuff. But he sacrificed anything over here in the sphere of cuddles. So, but then I've known people who didn't want to ever sacrifice the cuddles, but couldn't frickin' job. So when you start talking about things that are actual become chemical dependencies versus, there's a point where you lose the difference between choice and chemical dependency. So we've known people that can have that one drink and not have any problem. We've known people who can have one cigarette and not even think about it for 3 more years.
Yep.
So,
choice and it's not addiction.
so there needs to be a squiggly line in the sand there. There comes a point of your body's chemical makeup. Like, apparently I can't have sugar anymore. My body has said, screw you, I will not process sugar anymore. Because of my eating habits, chemical addiction issue. Whereas I still have to eat, so I have other foods. So am I going to punch you for a cookie? Some days. Have I yet? No.
It's coming.
He knows that every morning.
Fortunately, I'm mostly indestructible, so.
So,
2 feet from behind.
pillow over the face. Pillow over the face.
Got her.
You okay?
I should have known better than to take a drink while he was about to open his mouth.
But there needs to be a different, because we've both known people who can, you were quite the drinker, and so was I, and I can still have a drink and not go off the deep end, and so can you. And then there's other people who can't ever touch the stuff again, can't even have the NyQuil.
The term, by the way, is self-moderate. A person who can have just 1 cigarette a day and they're fine with it, and that's okay. There's somebody who can self-moderate. They can choose that they're going to, for instance, have 1 cookie. They'll be okay with it. There are people who can choose to have a drink, and they're okay with it. They can self-moderate. The point is there's also a lot of people who are incapable of self-moderation.
Well, and there's people who, I don't really use the word incapable, make the choice to not self-moderate.
Well, now I'll admit when I used to drink, I made the choice not to self-moderate.
Yes.
Absolutely. what fun would it have been to have drank and not self-moderated? The two things just did not go together for me.
Then you have these other people who 5 drinks in and they are trying to, no, I can drive. Like, you can't even find your car.
That's a bush.
Do you ever try to start
Your key doesn't go there. No.
Just stop. It tickles.
the
Belly button people. Jeez.
Well, and then
Higher.
to use your concept, even with your tea addiction, I joke and call it a quick trip addiction. But even when he doesn't go to quick trip, he makes tea at home. Even if it's not caffeinated tea, there's other tea, but it's not just water.
I'm horrible about drinking just water. Can't stand just water.
Tastes nasty.
Just water tastes nasty. I grew up out in the country. Water has a very specific flavor to me. This is what it's supposed to taste like. I've only been a couple of places in the world where it tasted like that. Wichita, it does not taste like that. Chlorinated, even after you filter it and everything else, it doesn't taste right.
Is that why it tastes that way?
Yeah. There's a whole process for clean. You know where our water comes from, right? You ever seen Cheney Lake?
It looks like your chocolate milk.
It's brown. It's brown. If you go swimming at Cheney Lake, you don't value what you put on when you go swimming because it's going to come out brown. It's nasty.
Permanently.
Pretty much. It's nasty.
I try not to go to Cheney Lake because I'm just trying to not remember it's there because I have to drink the water.
Yeah.
It's
So
better not to know about Cheney.
And I grew up 2 miles from Cheney Lake. As the crow flies, about two miles from the dam. So yeah, we had well water.
Very good well water.
Good well water, yes. Anyways, self-moderation. Yes, some people can do it just fine. Take for instance. So why would I'm giving up my caffeine and my nicotine? Or actually my cigarettes, not necessarily nicotine. Why would this be? Why would I choose to do this? And why would I give it up cold turkey? Just no, because I don't self-moderate. 2, I'm making sacrifices that are not good choices because of my caffeine. I can't self-moderate very well, so I end up drinking I drink a tea late at night, which means I don't get a good night's sleep.
Which means he doesn't get up and feed the cat in the morning.
Yes, and I have the cat. That would be my wife. Honey, come on, it's time to get up. Come on. She hasn't actually just pushed me out of bed yet, but
Because you land on the dog.
that's probably the only reason. Yes,
Pretty much.
she values the dog a lot more than me some days, I think.
The dog will always meet me at the door and cuddle and kiss me.
I'll say hi, honey.
Somehow I don't think that's the equivalent.
Especially because he hollers it from his office.
Which is even further
Hey,
away
if
from
your
the front
dog
door now.
said hi, honey, that would be impressive.
Yes. But the fact that he wants to hold my hand as soon as I get into the house, pretty meaningful. And he can't and the dog can't understand me when I say you're a big dumb dog and I love big dumb dog and I love you anyway. If I say that to Pookie, it just
So my updated version of when is it time to look at it as an addiction and a problem is when it starts to cause you to sacrifice other things on a frequent basis. I'm sacrificing part of my quality of sleep. So I have to do something about it. Not a bad thing. And giving up tea, I'm not giving up tea per se. As she pointed out, I actually have a tea right here. It has no caffeine in it whatsoever.
there's no tea leaves involved. It's not tea. It's called sesame.
It's mango tea.
Bobo tea.
It really is mango. It's mango flavored.
I'm aware of that. Still doesn't have any tea leaves in it. You can't call it tea.
They make rice tea.
Do I need to get Frank in here?
Frank.
I don't think you can get him in here. I don't think he'd show up. I think Frank's a sissy about it.
He's
I'll
better
put-
than you. I'd be careful.
Oh, trust me, I'm going to clip this and post it later.
Frank makes tea for a living. For
Frank-
those of you at home.
Frank is a friend of ours that owns 52 Teas, Zoomed Weebies, Southern Boy Teas brands. So he actually knows a lot about tea. He can tell you what a ribose is and all these things. I don't know. I just know it tastes good. And what doesn't. Bacon tea does not taste good.
It
So
doesn't.
you guys
I'm agreeing.
didn't drink bacon.
Okay, this is many years ago before.
Okay.
This,
No, we don't drink bacon.
We don't drink
anyway.
bacon, anyways. Yes.
I was gonna say eat bacon, but since this was a drink, I was having trouble.
Out of the
Like
roughly,
drink bacon.
out of the roughly 4 years that we've been together, 3 of us, we have not consumed pork product weekly.
Yes. And for the record, he owned a tea shop here in town where you could go in and get. It's called Zoomed Weebies, which was a great place. And he started making these specialty teas. I walked in one day. He says, "You gotta try this." What is it? Just try it. This is the nastiest, most foul thing I've ever tasted. Bacon tea. Anyways,
Ham hock floating in it.
Yeah.
one hammock or two. Anyways. Back on topic. Back on subject. Why? Well, that's a great question. I mean, honestly.
I still like that.
I'm looking for.
Yeah, I cut out caffeine, soda and stuff, cold drink. Feel great.
What do you drink now?
Hmm?
What do you drink now?
Mainly water. With the occasional tea. I got that tea. That's like first tea in a while. I had like a tea with dinner last night, but mainly it's water, milk.
Can't do the milk thing either. I like milk, but I can't do
Yes,
it.
he's not allowed to drink milk.
Yes.
We only have one bathroom in law.
Yes. And 3 people in the house, so. So what does the Bible actually say about addiction? Well, we're supposed to avoid it. Galatians. I always love this section of Galatians.
They talk about detoxing.
No one-stop detox. Fruits of the Spirit and sins of the flesh. Works of the flesh, excuse me. It's actually always a favorite section of mine out of the Bible.
He has an app called IDs and Fruits of the Spirit.
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, I do have 2 biblically based apps out there. One of them called IDs. It basically allows you to, it gives you one thing to work on every day, positive or negative, based on the fruits of the Spirit and works of the flesh. So you may start it up one day and it says, try to avoid acts of addiction. So, yeah. And fruits of the Spirit actually is, it's...
Stuff like self-control and patience and things like that.
Yep. In fact, it's
Actually one of my favorite ones where it's talking about a general thing instead of an actual parable.
yeah. Now, the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, I don't like this translation.
There's a couple of them.
Sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things of these like. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom. Oddly enough,
Doesn't it say that they're obvious though? That was one of the things that I've run across that I'm like, well, it says that they're obvious, so when he lists them out, and then they're all general, it's kind of like, what?
Well, think of sensuality, hedonism.
it could be taken that way. The problem is this is fairly, from my
Which translation is it?
ESV. Don't ask me why I'm looking at an ESV translation. Let's
Because you don't have the NSRV on there. Hedonism is basically the concept of whatever feels right at the moment, to please oneself.
This one, for instance, this is NET, uses the word drunkenness. Drunkenness instead of addiction. Some of them use different terms there. Now, you notice drunkenness was not covered at all in the ESV whatsoever.
Yeah, me and my Greek.
Yeah, I wish I knew enough Greek to be able to translate these things directly too. But alas, I do not. But they're given in the things that we're supposed to avoid. And there's good reasons for it. So, I'll be honest. I'm out of topic. I'm done on this topic. I've run out of material on this topic.
Oh, well, I got stuff. You kept cutting me off. I got stuff.
Oh, okay. Let's go for it.
But on that, with the concept of moderation, moderately taking cocaine, is it good, is it bad? It's illegal, so that still puts it outside of the scripture says to follow the law of the land.
In fact, that's the only definition for what we consider to be illegal drugs right now. The only thing for or against them within the Bible is whether or not they're legal. Some people have.
So, and then even with the concept of what he listed off there with the sexuality and whatnot, we know enough interesting people in our lives. What do you do with your husband and your husband and wife and you're married in the eyes of God? I don't really need to know. Really, I don't. But some people would say that XYZ sex acts are verboten for whatever reason because it's not procreative. So that comes into a whole nother concept of moderation. Yet again, doing those kind of things in front of your children, not appropriate.
Not appropriate, you're correct.
By doing those things in privacy of your own home otherwise, go for it. Telling Facebook what you did with your spouse, for those of you listening at home. No. I do not need to know. The world doesn't need to know.
Appropriate.
I don't need to know how the end is working. Just let it go.
That one's not sexual immorality. That one's actually,
If you're using it to cause lust in other people, or you're bragging about yourself.
See, now bragging, that's a different one. Using it to, maybe I'm different. I've never seen somebody's Facebook status and went, Anyways.
Well, apparently you don't have the same friends I do. Like, I did not need to know that about you.
Anyways.
For the whole concept of addiction, think about all of the things in which we, particularly as Americans, are addicted to. We're addicted to information. We're addicted to resources. We are addicted to food. We are addicted to shopping. The list goes on. Addicted to freedom, one could even say. I grew up in a small town where the grocery store closed at 8 o'clock at night if you were lucky. And so now, the fact that I want to go to the Walmart at 9, I better be able to go to the Walmart.
We're addicted to consumption in particular. We are taught, I think I've talked about this once early on, about the fact that we're actually taught self-loathing, taught to hate, etc., so that we do this.
So yeah, we consume some resources.
So that we go shopping at Walmart and to buy as many items as we want that we didn't even need in the first place. That's part of the U.S. condition right now. The idea that we have to, and actually, believe it or not, we're built on an economy that requires us
Yes.
to continue to purchase things. Because if we don't continue to purchase things,
It all falls down.
yes,
Yeah.
it's a big shell game.
Well, and even on that though, because you can be so careful about. I know a person who has some body image issues, and she's put together a little bit different. So she, I would say, is addicted to cosmetics, and she just has. And we're not even talking about the normal stuff. We're talking about where do you? I wouldn't even wear that colored eyeshadow to a horror film. I mean, just
A horror film?
horror film. Yes. Sorry, I mean Midwestern slang. So that's something, she doesn't have a lot of money, but that's where she spends, what?
It says anticipate.
Her.
Sorry.
So she spends a lot of her resources on this, and she makes less than I do, and she doesn't have money, and she recognizes that someone is an addiction. But on the other hand, she can't do anything about the rest of her body, so this is something that she puts a lot of effort into. So, you know, what is addiction? Especially now, you can be perfectly handicapable and have everything delivered to your front door with a click of a mouse button. You don't even have to go out to be a consumer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
everything's available on Amazon now.
yeah, you can even get groceries available on the word fresh. But there's so much that we are expected to have access to. Whereas when I go visit my parents, I forget the bank's closed on the weekends. They got an ATM in the last 5 years, and the grocery stores aren't open on Sunday morning. So if you need a resource, you have to plan ahead, or, shocker, go without. So there's a lot to be said about the concept of moderation. Just, I grew up without, when I was little, I didn't have cable TV. I learned to play and look through my picture books and drive my mom nuts until I could read. You just go without. Are you going to finish that word?
Not for a while.
4 years.
Anticipating that it will be finished at some point.
Well, because you carefully didn't even erase it. But then, and let's not forget, as people who are supposed to love, peace, and respect people, helping those with addiction. And what is help?
And actually, not even just helping. Don't forget, go one step further. Don't put stumbling blocks in front of people. That is very, very biblically based. For instance, let's say your friend is an alcoholic who just got himself cleaned up. What is the best thing you can do to that day? Take him out to the bar, right? No, that's putting a stumbling block.
Well, don't even take him to a restaurant that serves booze.
Yeah.
I mean, go to the McDonald's, go to a park, whatever.
Do things that help to help accommodate them. Don't put them in situations where it can cause a problem for them.
And then also, if you can adapt a situation to make it better for them. My dear and loving husband puts a lot of effort into not cooking cheeseburgers every night because he knows us and our roommate cannot have cheeseburgers anymore. So he sacrifices something for the betterment of the household. And I recognize this and make the most awesome cookie ever. And some of the things we're not supposed to eat. There's no cookies in our house. There's no candies, or well, we'll talk about bars north later, but there's none of that stuff just laying around to even be a temptation, no matter how much he wants to enjoy a cookie.
Good example of this was actually somebody on Facebook posted popcorn recently. Homemade, kettle-made popcorn, sounded really good. She said that they were also enjoying something called jammy something or other. I can't remember what they're doing. Yeah.
That's a cookie.
It's a cookie. I had not heard of this before, and they come in this
It's also a
banana and toffee.
It's also a target self-destruct button.
It's a
The
Doctor
Daleks
Who
don't know
episode.
about that.
You must be like into the most recent seasons because I'm.
Matt Smith. No. David Tennant. No. Yes. Go on.
No, it was Matt Smith.
It was. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if I watched all of Matt Smith's run. I don't remember that.
No, it's
It
not
was
the
the
most fun.
Iron Dalek one, the Iron
Yeah.
Swords one.
Anyway,
Okay.
for those of us who have no idea what you're talking about.
Sorry, man.
But anyways, so and one of my comments was, "There's one more thing I can't bring into the house because it would be bad for me to buy these really tasty cookies, bring them into the house, and expect the two diabetics in the house never to touch them.
If it's
That's just
banana,
me.
I'm not tempted.
Well, you're right. If it's banana, you're not going to be tempted. But they also came in raspberry
Get
and
like
other
a little
flavors.
cage and erect it, put it in the middle.
Laser grid around it.
Well, you could also put them in your office where the dog wouldn't get them either, and since I don't go in your office regularly, you'd be safe.
It's better just not to bring.
Yeah.
It's just more respectful not to eat any at all. Share the pain.
That seems to be a biblical thing. I mean,
Share the pain.
Paul was talking about, not making things worse for people, and if somebody else has an issue of conscience about you eating something,
Don't eat it in front
don't
of
eat
them.
it. Just go without.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said with that because, for instance, my mother, she does fairly decent about my eating choices, but then, like I'm one of 10 people that may be there at any given holiday. They're gonna have bacon and eggs in the morning, and I'm not gonna eat the egg that was cooked in the bacon grease.
Yeah.
So usually my egg goes first, or I cook my own, or I have cereal. It doesn't bother me. It does not putrefy me. I'm like, your arteries are clogging, but that's all I got. But it's not a problem for me. Whereas there are other persons that I have met who wouldn't go into a house where bacon had been cooked, and then the pan needed to be thrown out, and this whole thing. That's scripturally based. If you break or burn the pot, it has become unclean.
If somebody died in the room.
No. Even if something else, like if you got the mouse tracks in your flour bin, you are to destroy the pot and start again. We can talk about that part later. Anything that had been unclean, because even like the meat had turned in the cooking vessel, you can't use that again. You have to either burn it out or break it.
Room for debate on that one.
Yes, there's always room for debate.
And we're good at debate.
Anyway, but there's a whole lot to be said about addictions and like commonplace addictions and what you can and cannot do with them. I know that I have an unhealthy relationship with food. Therefore, having ice cream around people who are having ice cream makes me angry. But I'm also angry eating carrots, so it's kind of a thing. I have to eat. Humans have to eat. That is how we replenish ourselves. So when you have to have, you can't take it away. If you just don't drink ever again, fine, you can avoid that. Or if you don't, you're off the Coke, then you're off the Coke. Either version. But something like that, what do you do, can make all the difference in the world. My dear and loving husband is very kind about cooking for me and at the right times and everything else, and has not got mad at me when I throw the carrots. But that's the thing. Whereas I walk into other places and I have people say, "Oh, well, you can't eat that. You're diabetic." I'm like, you know what? Sod off. I'm a 34-year-old grown adult. Since when do you get to make decisions for me? You're 10. So there's how you help. Can be just as damning as not helping.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's things on Facebook all the time about what's on other people's shopping carts and people making judgments about whether they're on food stamps or not. And that really annoys me because they're not in the situation, so they don't really have anything except they've got the idea that this is their money or something.
Right.
But the minute you give your money to the government, it's the government's money. It's no longer your money.
Right.
I don't support wars, but I give the government the taxes, and the government takes the taxes and supports wars.
Right.
So,
The best story I ever read about that was the old white guy was giving this Latino woman a whole bunch of crap because she had kids that looked differently from each other, implying they had different fathers, and she was having problems using the food stamps and everything else like that. Whereas the person telling the story offered the lady assistance. She was a foster mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why all the kids were different, because they weren't hers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best way that foster care can track giving you expendence money is food stamps and things like that. So that's why the kids all look different. So that's why she was on food stamps. And that's also why she was pretty. She'd obviously did her hair and her makeup, but then she was on food stamps. So, well, you're spending your money on it, kind of thing. So that one I think was the best story ever on that.
There's also very biblically based in this when it comes to the idea that you're not supposed to make fun of somebody else because or look down upon them for what they do or don't eat or what they're dealing with. Very specifically, it was about the idea of whether or not they eat meat, whether or not they celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday, or whether they celebrate the Sabbath all week. We're not supposed to look down on other people.
Yeah.
So if you know somebody who has, knowing somebody has addiction issues, and then saying, oh man, you haven't had a cigarette in ages. Man, that must suck. It's a horrible thing to do. And I have to
So
say,
you've done it.
I'm that jerk. I have done it. This is absolutely wrong of me. And there will be revenge for at least a couple of people coming, I'm sure. But
and then okay, I'm fairly socialistic anyway. If you don't have patient on there pretty soon, I'm going to get up there and do it.
You wouldn't get up on camera.
Behave.
Behave. But I did my hair today, so why not? But the concept of what you can do to help somebody. Would it really break your freaking heart to give up one canned good a month when you have an abundance and you're covered? I talk about you sacrificing to cook better for me and my roommate, but you're also eating healthier. You're eating veggies and stuff too.
When I remember to eat.
Yes. We talked about the ADHD. I have alarms on my phone to tell me to eat, so I'm not judging about remembering to eat. But there's so much to be said about what is health. I have a wonderful story, and I'm not trying to shame my mom. She's doing the best she can with the information she has. As an adult, I was looking for the aspirin or something in her house, and I couldn't find it. And I asked her for it, and she's like, "Oh, well, if you have a headache, how about eat something?" I was like, "I'm not hungry." "Oh no, have a piece of pie. That'll help your headache." I'm like, "Mom, I am fat. I do not need a piece of pie. I need Tylenol." She goes to the trouble of getting the pie out of the fridge and putting it on a plate, and I am stamping my foot like a 2-year-old. "Mom, I don't want any blankety blank pie. I'm just looking for the Tylenol for my headache." And it's like 11 o'clock at night. And she's like, "Oh, you don't need to be upset about it." And I love my mother a lot, and I'm very glad that she had pie because it means she's rich enough to have pie, and glad she has a refrigerator, etc., etc. But I just really wanted the Tylenol for my headache that woke me up. It had nothing to do with food. How are you helping somebody? Giving a drowning man a rock so he can build a house later is not going to help him.
Agreed.
And we all have those moments of weakness. And even as far as our governmental structure, throwing money at the problem, because that always fixes it. We'll give you food stamps. "Oh, you're living on the street. How very interesting. Oh, you don't have a microwave. You don't have electricity, but you have food stamps." So there's levels of how are you helping? And I can keep going, so when you keep looking at me like that.
Well, I have this interesting dilemma. Because we kind of run a little bit out of topic. But I'm the one up on camera.
And
So it means for the last 15 minutes, what everybody's been seeing is me kind of voguing it a little bit. And while other people behind the camera are talking, I've considered turning it. Just
You lured her up by not finishing the freaking work.
Yes!
Yes, he gets to sleep on the couch.
Oh, dear.
Guess we followed you with the camera.
Tell me you didn't.
My wife, by the way, does not appear on camera. You all right with
You're
it?
showing me a picture. It has nothing to do with anything, actually. You're showing me a picture and my brain cannot understand it.
Gotcha.
1983
Anyways.
versus 2005.
So what?
1983 versus 2005. George Lucas was the set of Star Wars, and then George Lucas versus the set of Star Wars.
7, yeah. Gotcha. All right.
I really did.
I tried really hard.
Yeah, that's why I tried really hard.
Now that I've baited my wife completely, I'm in a lot of trouble.
Master.
Last week there was some pretty interesting words put on the board.
Oh, that does remind me. I was going to give an apology at the beginning, not for the language, but for not giving anybody a warning first. I think the use of the language that was in there last week was good use of it. It was an adult conversation that required the use of words that started with P, C, D, but it was an adult conversation that you literally, to have that conversation about it, you had to have those words involved. So, but my only concern was I didn't rate it on YouTube that such a thing could occur. And there was no warning up front, hey, if you at home have a problem, or if you're watching with small children, I didn't do that. But we weren't originally supposed to go into that part of the conversation anyways.
It was a tangent.
Jody went with it, and she did look at me and ask,
Can I write this word on the board?
Yes, go for it, because I felt it was appropriate where she was going with things. So.
Well, and that's one of those hard to discuss topics. We're going to talk about a thing, but I can't mention the thing.
Yes, we're going to talk about.
You all know what the word I'm writing.
You know what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just to make a lot of assumptions.
Right. Well, and it's that way when you're talking about anything. Yes. How are you supposed to explain to a 10-year-old daughter what molestation is so it doesn't happen to her?
Oh, I'm absolutely.
You have to talk about that. And you have to use the proper words. And that's why the 4-year-old went into my dog's tummy and used that word, because he knew what that part was. It was very cute, and he kept saying it repeatedly, and his mother embarrassed me. Awesome.
Yes.
The dog's a boy.
Yes. So.
God bless little children.
Yes, and if you're gonna have the conversation, you have to have the conversation, And in this case, if anybody didn't catch it last week, you might want to go back and take a look at it. It was actually a very worthwhile presentation and conversation with Jody Simon, whose specialty is on women's rights and communication and such.
In sociology,
etc. Yeah, she's got a block of titles about yay long, so, which I thought was funny.
But it is one of those things, you have to talk about the thing. Otherwise, assumptions and expectations. How do you know that something's a swear word after you have the bar of soap in your mouth? That's not the time to know that's a swear word.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to go ahead and wrap us up, even though it's a little early. I know. It's unheard of for us to actually stop early. Especially before we get to that point. Anyways, next week we're going to do something really weird. We're going to talk about our enemies. Enemies of Christianity, enemies of Islam, enemies of
Not
ourselves,
personally.
enemies of the United States, enemies. Bring your favorite list of enemies. Because we're actually going to put some of them up.
Define enemy.
Well, there's there's probably the point of the conversation.
Because there's a lot of people I don't agree with and who I'm not supposed to be alone in a room with. But
You wouldn't call them your enemy.
I wouldn't give it that much thought.
Spring nuts.
Huh?
Hmm?
What did you say?
Oh, they're a piece of hardware I work with at work. They're my
Spring nuts. Yes.
spring nuts.
Yes, Jesus plans.
You hate them.
They're my arch nemesis.
The bane of your existence, right?
Not bang, just the nemesis.
Well, arch nemesis, that's very specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be the only one, the highest one.
I had somebody
Well, and
once
then-
tried to make themselves my arch frenemy. I told them they didn't count that high. That was Mark.
Who's now our roommate, just so everybody knows that.
Yes.
But yeah, the definition of an enemy versus you can dislike somebody, you can not agree with, you can choose not to believe in or follow their way of life.
Mhm.
But what is an enemy?
Well, that's what we're going to get into. We're going to get into that next time. And the reason why, like I said, bring your favorite list of enemies. Bring your list. Bring your enemies. Same one. Bring your list of enemies.
Bring your enemies. Let's interact.
Actually, yes, bring your enemies with you.
And we will interact, and we will conflict resolution.
Slide the table back.
And
Knock down, drag out.
well, like for instance,
bar.
the most recent conflict between Hamas and Israel, they both want the other side to perish. You can't win.
Wait. Who wants each side to perish?
They both do.
The people don't.
No.
The
Bob
governments
from
do.
Hamas and Bob from Israel
Could
want
give two
them
shits.
to not.
So-
Not laymen.
You're
Yes.
right. Not the people. The people.
Well, keep in mind,
Not for the most part.
Hamas is not the
I've
ruling party
actually
of
talked
Gaza.
to
It is
foreign
all of the
exchange students who said to me stuff I hear on the news all the time, which is, the government is this way, yes, but the people are totally fine. They just don't have any control of what the government's doing.
Yeah.
And they said that to me about the U.S. And I was like, but we're a democracy.
Yeah.
But really.
Sort of. Kinda.
But really, it was the same thing you hear on the news all the time. Oh yeah, this government over here is terrible, and it's oppressing its people. You know, but the people aren't down with this. We need to rescue those people. But if somebody tried that with us, we'd be all like, invaders!
Actually,
Yes, it's usually called terrorism at that point.
actually, I'm going to. I will be sure to look up and post on First Geek Congregation tomorrow an article somebody wrote that was what's happening in Missouri from. So what?
No, don't.
What's happening in Missouri from a international perspective.
Mhm.
Written as if this was all reversed. When we in the U.S. look at everything else that's going on and we make our declarations, this is everybody else making their declarations on what's going on in Missouri. And
There were people
That should be
in Gaza
fascinating.
tweeting to Ferguson about how they need to deal with tear gas.
that is just so wild, so wild. Anyways, I will post that this week. It's a worthwhile read. It is a worthwhile read. So, anyways, for now though, we're gonna call it good for the day, and we've actually sat here and managed to absorb another extra 10 minutes, so that's perfect. So, hope to see you all next week.